Hello and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to TN Tuesday. So for all of the summer, and hopefully maybe even a little bit beyond, but definitely for all of the summer, I am going to try and make good on a project that I started a year and a half ago, maybe even a little bit more. And then it sort of fell by the wayside. So if you've been following me for a while, you know that I turned 60 in October of 2017, and I decided to embark at that point on quite an ambitious project through Traveler's Notebooks, and that was to record my first 60 years on this planet from different perspectives. So the first perspective I had was my eye on the world. So this is more world events, news, newsworthy items that I remember and my perception of them and how I felt about them. So it's by all means not going to be a complete record of world events, because there are certain things that probably I didn't even hear of or didn't catch my attention or whatever. But the first perspective was my eye on the world. Then another perspective was just, of course, myself, which is 60 dates, times, and happenings that shaped my story. So this will be all sorts of little tidbits of things that maybe I remember of my childhood, of later in life, of life, just life in general, and my little stories. A third perspective is technology. And for, I guess, the time that I've been alive is probably one of the most active in that period where technology has just gone and grown and advanced in leaps and bounds. So, oh, there you go, that's my title page, Leaps and Bounds. So that is another perspective I wanted to record. And then culture and the arts. I've always loved music, dance, reading for sure, art, painting. So just recording arts and culture from maybe my point of view throughout life. For instance, I love Monet, so I'll be talking a lot about that and recording my visit to Givenchy, that kind of thing, in this Traveler's Notebook. And then further on, I decided to also add travel. I haven't really started that one. I haven't got anything done on that, as I'm not quite sure which twist, which spin I'm going to put on that, because of course a lot of my scrapbooking is already travel. So I want to see how, but it's been such a big part of my life. I've been lucky enough to travel extensively. A lot of that, for probably 10 years, was business travel, and I traveled for my work. So maybe putting a little bit of a personal spin on how that was. Anyway, I'm not quite sure where that one's going to go. Anyway, that's a very long introduction, and some of you may have heard this before, and some of you may have seen a little bit of this before, because I did start this with the intent of really documenting this on a regular basis, and I did record a couple of shares early on. I will link them below, and then it sort of petered away and fizzled away. So I want to resurrect it, because it really is a project that I want to do. So I am saying it publicly and committing to you here that for at least the summer, I'm going to have a series every Tuesday, TN Tuesday, for this project. So I'll go quickly through, I guess, what I've done. I will link the previous videos below. If you haven't been following me for that long, you may not be aware of the project, so I will link the previous videos below. If you have been following me and you've already commented and seen a lot of this, I will just go quickly here to put you back into context of what I had done, and I will finish with two new spreads that I have done just in this last past week. So I'm going to try and remember to perhaps in the description box below put the time where those shares start, because if some of this is repetitive for you, then you can just skip on over to that. So as I had mentioned, the first part of what I'm doing is just really date, times, and happenings that shaped my story. So here I just put a few. This is more of an introductory page, me as a child. This is me actually on or around my 60th birthday, a little bit of a shadow photo, and a winter photo. So just a little bit of an introductory page. And so it begins 1957 in Scarborough. So I did a lot of stenciling. Very early on, one of my first kits, I think it might have been my second or third Secret Not Secret Kit Club kit, was a Traveler's Notebook kit for this project, and it had this beautiful butterfly stencil in it. This lots of journaling here about Christmas, a few little things that I remember from very early on, and this kind of pull up and little interactive element. I remember copying this from something that Christy from Christy's Beautiful Life had done. So this is very, very, very early on. A page that documents my granddad, my hero, my grandpa, who was really, this just says it all. This is me stepping on him. And I used to, that poor man, he used to play, we played horsey. I would jump on his back. He would get down on the floor and play. He really was a role model for life, and somebody that maybe set a few standards for me that not many men have been able to live up to. A few, not many. This was a storyteller challenge in one of our Secret Not Secret Kit Club parties, and it was about a memory or a childhood memory, and it worked perfectly in here. A lot of this project is based on me having to Google and find a lot of stock photos or news photos from back in the day and print them out, and it's fun doing that. And this was a plaza which was maybe a kilometer or two away up from our house, and it was one that my mom used to take me to all the time, and there was a store called Walker's that my mom used to go to almost every single week, maybe more than once a week, I don't remember, and we would go shopping. My mom was really a shopper in the day, and this particular one was about this store and the lady whose name is actually Lois, I still remember that, in the book section of Walker's, where my mom would go to the store and she would leave me in the book section and I would sit on the floor and read. Well, this is actually probably before I knew how to read books upside down. I would look at pictures, but what seems to me today in recollection, I would spend hours there looking through books and spending time talking to that lovely lady Lois. That is an awesome little childhood memory, and I owe this lovely lady Lois. I don't think this goes here. I think this maybe goes over here. Yes. Oh, see, there you go. Oh, again, I need to take I think it goes over here. Anyway, so we'll have to pick here because I owe her my love of reading. So that is that one. There we go. And then, oh, this one is, that's the Walkers. And then we move over here. This was, again, recording a Christmas and some Christmas Eve memories. And this one I have started this week, but I have not finished it. And it's really about the very first school I went to, the house that I was born in, how close the school was. And the story I want to tell about that is how in those days, even at 5, 6 years old, I could walk to and from school on my own or with my friends in all safety and security, and we didn't even think about it, we just did it. This was maybe only, actually it says here it was an 8-minute walk. And how maybe today times have changed. That's sort of the spin that I want to give on this. So this is new, I haven't finished it. This is using some scraps from my April How to Kill a Kit with Style kit, which was based on Chamel. So there you go. I have a little tag here. This is what the house would look like now. I don't really know whether I should show that much because I don't have permission to share that, obviously. And what I wanted to record and journal about here is also when I went back and the new owners of the house, sometime in the 1990s, allowed me to tour and visit the house 30 or more years after we had left this particular house. So that is that one. So this I will share when it's complete. There we go. Then technology. Now the only thing I have done on technology so far is really phones and how incredible that has been. This phone, this I got off Google, but my grandparents had this phone when I was young, and I put here in French deux long deux court because in those days, this would have been early 60s, phones were all party lines, and this phone was actually in a closet. It was a closet in my grandparents' house, but it was sort of like a French door, so it was a little bit of glass, so it was almost like a little phone booth in the house. It was a 4-party line, and to know that it was us, the ring would be 2 long rings and 2 short rings. That was us. Then I go through here a series of phones that we had in my childhood. My very first phone number, which somehow I remember, Hickory 46229. I don't remember any of the phone numbers in between. I have trouble remembering my phone number now, but I do remember that one and the various phones we had in those days. Then, of course, as phones got a little bit more advanced, the first portable phones, the touch tone phones, and now cell phones, and how today these are really actually computers. And when I get into the computers, I will sort of link those back together, because quite frankly, what I have today and what you have today is not a phone. I mean, we can use it as a phone, but it's a phone, it's a camera, it's a TV, it's a mail service, it's a computer. It's a computer and even more. So the next bit that I'm going to document in here, and I just need to print off the pictures, is about TV, and then the next will be about computers. So that is technology. Then the culture one I haven't really started. I have printed off some photos. This will probably be my first because it's one of my first memories. And this was the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. I think this might have been in 1963 or 1964. Then my love of reading, and I love cozy mysteries, and it all started with Nancy Drew, then on to Agatha Christie, and I found a lot of more modern day cozy mysteries that are based on crafts. There's a scrapbooking one, some about the love of tea, where you get this fun little cozy murder mystery, but also it relates to arts and crafts in different sorts of ways. So I'll be putting that in there. And as I mentioned, I'll be documenting my love of Monet in there. And then the fourth, Traveler's Notebook, which is My Eye on the World, and started out with just a little bit of an introduction here, which says exactly that this insert is meant to record world events newsworthy items and the state of the world throughout my first 60 years, but from my perspective, how I was affected by it or how I lived them. Google has the facts. I want my vision of the world recorded as I remember it. Therefore, some events will be missing. Others may seem to have too much importance to some. Others may have a twist that might be a little bit different than the facts, because that might be the way I remember it. So the first thing I recorded here, which is probably my first conscious memory, is the assassination of Kennedy on the 22nd of November, 1963. How I didn't quite really understand what was happening. I know I was in grade 1. They sent us home from school. I remember the teacher crying, walking home with all my friends, and we couldn't quite figure out what was going on. How could it be one of our uncles if this was, we were all affected? It was quite confusing and worrisome to this 6-year-old who then got home with the news, and my mom and the neighbors had all congregated. And I know at that time we had a television set, so everybody, a lot of the immediate neighbors were all at my house, and the entire day was spent riveted to the news. And then, of course, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think we were actually off school for a few days. And I remember we were definitely off school to watch the funeral. And then, so this I've left blank because I go into 2-page spreads that go together and that are nicer and more fun events, obviously. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do here to record. Now, I might be putting Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy here, although they would not be chronologically correct here, but I might do that because it's the same type of thing, the same type of feeling, although on those two I was a little bit older, so better able to understand and maybe sort of compare a little bit how I was able to live them. I'm not sure. So I left this page blank for now. And then this spread is about the inauguration of the Metro here in Montreal. In 1966, I was not living in Montreal yet. We had not moved to Quebec. I was still in Toronto, but we would come and spend most of our summers here with my grandparents and some relatives in the small town that I actually now live in. And the first time I saw the Metro was actually in 1967 for Expo 67, but it was actually inaugurated in October of 1966. So I just have a few photos here. This is one of the inauguration. The escalator here, because there's such a funny story. And our Metro is a very good metro system. And it had just a very few lines there, but hooray, it was such a very big thing. Now, Montreal's Metro was inaugurated in October of 1966, with 26 stations on 3 lines. It now has 68 on 4, and the original idea was actually 7 lines. So we'll see where that goes. It's still so much in the news, and our lines are colored. There's the orange line, the blue line, the green line, and the yellow line. And I think now they are talking about the pink line, which might be the next line. So it was really done towards Expo 67, which was going to be coming the next year, which is when I discovered it as almost a 10-year-old. It was such an adventure to go to Expo 67 with the family and experience the Metro. The funniest, though, was getting divided on the escalator, which is why there's this photo of the escalator, because these were something brand new. I'd never seen an escalator, and this was just amazing to go up and down on an escalator. But somehow the family, we got split at the first Metro station, and we lost one another. And then all of a sudden, the escalator, we saw my aunt and some of her kids, Tante Mariette, going up on the other escalators. So you see escalators, you have, going down and going up. And what I remember, and we were laughing so hard because we had lost one another, and my mom and I think my grandfather were saying, where could they be? And they were likely saying exactly the same thing. And the next thing that happened is we passed one another. They were going up and we were going down. We laughed so hard. So that's what I remember about my first experience of the Montreal Metro. And then Expo 67, Expo 67 was amazing. It was a World's Fair. It was one of the larger ones, not the largest. There have been larger since, and there was larger before. Both New York and Paris had been larger, but I think other than those, it was the largest at that time. And this here, what I am using for the majority of my supplies are all of these, which either from How to Kill a Kit with Styles, or I collect all my smaller scraps and I have them all, a paper anyway, all by different sizes and bits that go together. And this is where I start. This is where I start to prepare my pages. So as you can see here, I grabbed this piece of paper. This here is from Crate Paper for sure. This is actually a Stampin' Up, and you see this is a Crate Paper Maggie Holmes Bloom, and the back of it is this paper here that I used. And then you can just see a little bit peeking under here. I tied these two parts together with just a strip of this side of the paper. This is a chipboard piece from a Chamel collection. These were just on my bowl, in that lovely bowl, those lovely bowls that I have on my desk. Vicki Boutin. These are some of these lovely dots that I received from my friend Helen. And then, now you see, I really wanted to do a little bit of decorating here. So I've got some washies out because a Traveler's Notebook is just perfect for washi tape. So I used a black and a sort of mustard yellow that goes with this side of the page, really just because I had a lot of journaling. So I didn't really want to put too much, nor put any pattern paper on this page. So I just put two little washi strip top and bottom going in opposite ways. This little die cut that was in, I think it was in my April How to Kill a Kit with Style. I had punched these circles out, just inked the edges. This was in my scrap bowl, and then I put a title here, which is Fun and Games. So my take on Expo 67, there will likely be a couple of more layouts about Expo 67 because there was also La Ronde, which is a big fair as well with rides, and I forget the word for that. Somebody help me out. But anyway, so there'll probably be a couple more. But to this day, I remember the gorgeous green glass being blown. Dark mint, almost emerald. That's what I remember. And that's why, if you can see here, I have a photo of the Czechoslovakian pavilion. It was Czechoslovakia in those days. It had not yet become two republics, Slovakia and the Czech Republic. So Expo 67 ran from the end of April to end October 1967, of course, in honor of Canada's centennial. People from all over the world flocked to the city. But what I remember most are family giggles, the escalator incident, getting lost and separated on the monorail, because that's another one where we got lost and separated. So I've got a couple of photos of that, which will be another thing that I will be documenting. And the beautiful glasswork at the Czech Pavilion. It was the most gorgeous thing I had ever seen, and I was mesmerized. To this day, I remember standing and watching that glass, and it was turning, and the flames, and how beautiful it was, watching the artists at work. And I put here 9 years old, July 1967, because I turned 10 only in October of that year. So that is that memory. And as I said, there will be a few more that I will be recording. And then a couple of other events that I want to record in here that I've actually printed off the photos. Just recently, it was the 50-year anniversary, would you call it that, of John Lennon and Yoko Ono's bed-in here in Montreal. I had mentioned before Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King assassination. One of the biggest things that I remember, which was Man on the Moon in July of 1969. So those are coming up here, and a couple of more things related to Expo 67 before I move on to the 70s. So there you go. So I am going to come back here every Tuesday, and I'm going to try. So this video, I'm sorry, is very long because I really wanted to get everybody back up to speed, get myself back up to speed, but also share a couple of spreads. So I'm going to try and get between at least two spreads a week for the summer, if I possibly can, maybe even a little bit more. I work a lot less in June. I don't work at all in August. It is my annual summer holiday. I do a little bit of a work marathon in July because that's when my nephew goes on vacation. But this kind of thing I can get done in an evening if I get myself set up. So join me every Tuesday and tell me, what do you think about this kind of project? Have you thought about doing something like this? Obviously, if you're much younger, you haven't thought about it yet, but maybe you're doing something like this as you go so that you won't have to rely on your memory when you get to my age. So give me any comments you might have below. Thanks so much for all your support. I love reading all of your comments. I do try and get back to everybody. And I will see you next Tuesday with another TN Tuesday. Talk to you soon. Bye.